To make this sculpture, I used a random character generator I put together. It has categories for creatures, jobs, personalities, props, and a few other things. If you're curious, pause the video and take a look. For this character, I rolled a pig and a chicken, a bard for the job, sad for the personality, and a bell for the prop. At first I wasn't entirely sure where this one was going, but as I started sketching ideas out, I landed on this washed up bard who had seen better days. Maybe he used to play sold out shows. Maybe he was famous. Either way, those days are behind him, and now he's standing on the side of the road in a chicken suit trying to make ends meet until he gets his big comeback. And now that our creature is created, let's go ahead and get started. I begin with a simple wire armature and started blocking in the basic shapes with clay. At this stage, I'm not worried about details. I'm just trying to establish the overall proportions in the silhouette. Once I have enough clay built up, I start smoothing everything out and refining the shape of the body before moving on to the face. I carve out an outline of where the pig's face would sit inside the chicken costume. I also carve out some vertical and horizontal lines so that I have an idea of where to place the eyes. Once I'm happy with the outline, I added some pre-baked clay balls for the eyes. From there, I began building up the face itself, slowly adding clay and blending everything together until it felt like one solid form. After that, I started working in some of the character. I added eyelids, wrinkles, and a few subtle details to help sell the tired expression. Since the character rolled sad, I wanted him to look like life had been a little rough lately. Next came the snout and the mouth. I kept the mouth small and downturned to reinforce that worn out, defeated look. With the face mostly finished, I moved on to the chicken costume. I added the opening around the face and then started building up the top of the head. Then I added the comb, which I only recently learned is the actual name of that thing on top of a chicken's head. Next, I moved to the beak. This part was actually pretty simple. Just a small chicken beak shape with a line cut through the middle to separate the top and bottom halves. I wanted the costume's eyes to have a cartoony look to them, but they ended up being one of the trickier parts of the sculpt. Since they were just thin little strips of clay, getting them positioned evenly took a bit of patience. With the face of the costume finished, I started working on the legs and feet. I began with 3 large toes for each foot and then added a few extra details to push them in a more cartoony direction. I wanted the whole costume to feel a little goofy, like something he reluctantly put on for the job while he waits for his music career to turn around again. Once the legs were finished, I moved on to the hands. The pig hands are pretty simple, just a palm and a few stubby fingers. In one hand, I added a thin sheet of clay and crumpled it up to look like a flyer he's been handing out all day. For the other hand, I made it Bell off camera. Hopefully he can put some of his musical talents to use and attract a few more customers. I added cuffs around the wrist and then a few extra feather-like details on the sleeves. I also added a zipper on the back of the costume. It felt kinda empty and felt like it needed a bit more detail. The sign hanging from his neck was probably the most frustrating part of the sculpt. I baked the sign pieces separately, then attached them afterwards. Getting everything lined up and secured was much harder than I expected, but I eventually got it working. With the sculpt finished, it's time for the paint. But before getting into the colors, let's take a quick look at his stats. For the skin, I started with a dark pink, and I gradually layered lighter shades on top to build up depth and highlights. I used the same approach throughout the piece, working from dark colors towards lighter ones. It was satisfying to see all the layers start building up. The extra depth and contrast really helped bring the character to life. And at this point, I was getting pretty excited about how he was turning out. Painting the X's needed the same amount of patience as sculpting them. I didn't want to get the black paint all over the freshly painted costume. The feet and the beak were painted the same way, starting dark and slowly building up highlights until I was happy with the result. The bell ended up being one of my favorite parts of the paint job. I used layered browns, yellows, and highlights to give it a metallic appearance, and I was really happy with how it turned out. For the flyer, I wanted it to feel like a cheap handout he was passing out to strangers, so I painted it an aged off-white and added some simple red markings to make it look like text and graphics. The eyes were built up from a dark gray to a nearly pure white, helping them stand out against the face while still keeping that tired expression. Finally, I painted the sign. I wanted it to look worn and dirty, so I layered several shades of a yellowed white before adding lettering in dark reds and then brighter highlights. And with that, our washed up Bard was finished. He may not be heading to concerts anymore, but at least he's got a job until his next big break. Let's take a look at the final shots.